One of my daughters said, oh, you know, it's Lent, and what did you give up for Lent this year? And I don't have anything. And she said, well, you know, it's not like you take us to church or anything. This is why. We were watching that story last night on TV about Ruby Frank. I do have a story that is a personal story about being kidnapped by a cult, I guess. My kids are hearing this for the first time. And we're gonna tell it while I'm getting ready. I was 23 years old at the time. I was already a nurse. I had been a nurse at that time for 2 years. I had just gotten in my own apartment, and believe it or not, I took a part-time job as a Publix cashier. It wasn't about money for me. It was just about social interaction because I was coming out of a really bad relationship. Man comes through my line. He's probably in his late 20s. Before Tinder. Hey, what are you doing later? You want to get together? Sure. Met him a couple times after work during that week. Not a big deal. Like, you know, this wasn't like a sexual thing. The weekend, and on Tuesday night that week, he asked me to go with him to a Bible study. Wednesday, the next day, and he picks me up at my apartment, and we go to somebody's house for a Bible study. I knew something was a little off because the men were separated from the women. Still was okay because I'm thinking, I hooked up with this guy, let's go. Women into another room, they throw a Bible in my hand, we all start talking. Conversation immediately shifted to me, specifically all of my sins. They saw how I was dressed, and actually a pair of shorts, and I mean, we lived in Florida. They were all in like a skirt, you know, and there were like maybe 5 or 6 of them, and the men were all in the other room with that guy. And they start telling me about how a sin it is to allow yourself to be alone with a man. I needed to repent for my sins. And on into Thursday morning. Worked in shifts, right? So there were 3 of them with me. Midnight-ish, they made a phone call. 3 more came and stayed with me for another 4 hours. At some point, you're so sleep deprived that you don't really know which way you're going, right? I mean, I had to change of clothes, I had to shower. I didn't have anything with me when I got to their house. They took me home. There were 2 women that took me home. One man stayed in the car. The other 2 women took me to my apartment, let me shower. This is like Friday. And meanwhile, they're telling me about how my parents and my family were the only enemies that I had, and that they were going to be my salvation, and that I had to say goodbye to my parents. I had a phone call on that Friday telling my parents, my mom, that I was going to be living with them for a while. I mean, mind you, I hadn't slept since Tuesday, and you know, I could be months before I could talk to you. My mom was very upset. They were very concerned. They were calling all my friends. Nobody knew where I was because this is 1993. GPS, we didn't, you know, everyone was talking on beepers, I guess. My mom was saying a novena every day. I don't know what a novena is, you should look it up. I was quasi staying on my own. I wasn't like asking them to leave. I really just wanted to go home to my own bed. And they just kept repeating over and over, this is the Church of God, this is the path that you're on now, that everything is a sin, that you shouldn't be with a man before you get married, that, you know, this is the way Jesus wanted it. And I, you know, listen, I had already been married, and I had definitely been around a few blocks, and I was like, what are they talking about? Saturday of that week, so this is 4 days later, I ended up, I realized that something was just wrong. I got to wrap this up because I've got to go to work. I ended up leaving on the Saturday. I told them that I was just going home to get a change of clothes and be fine by myself. And I went home to my apartment. I ended up sending somebody to my house later that night. They did a rotation overnight on Saturday of people in the parking lot watching. I didn't leave my house again, my apartment again. And it actually ended up involving the police the next day because they were banging on my door relentlessly, trying to get me to come back outside. I ended up calling the police. My next door neighbor was a police officer at the time, and he came out and handled into that. And anyway, multiple police officers telling them to leave me alone. Finally did it. Just like that Jody Hildebrand or whatever her name was for Ruby, it doesn't take much for somebody to be like ground into the ground. Church of God, you're a sinner, you have to repent. I'm married, I didn't have any kids, it's just me. I think that these people prey on stuff like me. This experience when I was 23, and after that, my church is in here, my church is in my heart. That's it. Why I don't Bible tote. So anyway, those kinds of cults prey on people. People like that are out there. You have to be mindful of who you're talking to. Don't let them convince you you're a good person. You keep your moral compass up and you stay away from groups like that. Cults exist. I know because I was kidnapped by one for 4 days. Anyway, that's story time. Hope you guys have a great day. I gotta go to work. Peace.